Welcome everyone. This is our Thursday morning production call. I'm Joe Martinez and I get to host this with y'all. Um, I'm super stoked about this one. Just a ton of new agents out there right now. Um, and I think one of the biggest uh, concepts or theory, right, of what we do and how we do it is not losing sight of what our real job is, and that real job is to protect the family, right? I love to always tell a new agent, right? Yes, we sell mortgage protection, but mortgage protection is a concept, right? One of the biggest questions I get when an agent calls Danelle is they're like, I don't see any of the mortgage protection policies. Where are those? Right? It's because they don't exist, right? Mortgage protection is a concept. In insurance world, only a term and a whole life exists, right? In between those two things, there's just all kinds of stuff, right? Different kinds of terms, different kinds of whole life, from IULs, final expense, whatever they want to be called, right? But again, those are just names of policies by companies. There's only a term and a whole life. We pitch a concept called mortgage protection, and it's in the name, right? We're protecting their mortgage through a life insurance policy. What we use in between that is not even based on our decision, right? It's based on the client's life, right? Their age, health, and budget. That's actually what's going to determine what we use to cover uh, their house, right? And so that's what we'll be teaching on today, right? Product selling versus problem solving. And then one of my favorite things is breaking records for you, right? Again, just love watching on band. All y'all post your numbers, and I'm watching everyone's numbers increase, right? The most appointments at, the most dialed in a day, the most appointments booked and stuff like that. So I'm gonna hit a little bit on that just because I think it's super important to increase your business, right, by breaking your own record. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that, but first, a little bit of housekeeping rules. I always love to say, right, this is an hour-long call. Um, if you think you're going to remember everything we talk about, you are crazy, right? It's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be pretty detailed. So always suggest you have a pen and notepad out. Do not just rely on listening to the information and being able to pull it out later, right? So just please take notes. One very important thing I always love to say, whatever you hear today, don't go and change everything you do in your appointment. At this point, you know what to do. You have been able to help a family before, right? You know the process. If you're brand new, you still know the process, right? We have a script. All we do is dial, book appointments, and run the appointments. There is nothing to have to revamp. These are just little techniques, right? Take notes from today. And a great concept is write two or three downs that really hit home for you, as in, hey, you know what, I'm doing that and I'm not getting the results that I want. So that's one thing I want to implement right into my appointment. So just add two or three things to each appointment, right? Don't go out and change the entire thing. And then I do want to keep it super interactive, so please feel free to raise your hand, unmute, as long as it's topic related, right? I love to go to keep it super interactive with all of y'all. The way these classes are designed, right, is literally what we hear throughout the week, right? So that's why every week there's almost a different topic, because it's just what we're hearing from the majority, right? We kind of ask all the AOs and say, hey, what was the problem this week, right? Or what are you hearing from your new agent? So this is what one of the biggest things we heard this week was, right, folks looking for companies, folks looking for products, right? And so we don't do that. So we're going to go into product selling versus problem solving, and so we'll get started. Um, Again, first, the concept, right, of mortgage protection. It's a concept, right? It, if you come into this loving, right, because we've brought on a ton of agents these past couple of months, and some are licensed, some are not, right? I always love to say, right, it's like in the restaurant business, Amber, right? It was almost nicer to bring in a brand new person and train them to be a server for the position, right? Because they didn't any, and I don't want to say bad habits, but they didn't have any different habits, right? And it's kind of the same thing in insurance, right? Depending where you work, some folks have hey, whole life is crap, only do term. Others are like, hey, no, term is horrible. You should only do whole life. And that's product, right? You are in love with the product. And usually an agent's going to struggle with that in mortgage protection, because you're trying to fit the client into a product, not trying to find the problem and help the family, right? So what we do is we don't sell product. We don't pick what we're going to show the client. The product is picked by the the product is picked by the client based on their age, health, and budget and their need, right? That is truly being able to help a family. Because when you start selling product, you're going to get chargebacks, right? Because they're like, well, some folks like IULs. I've seen a new agent come in here and on mortgage protection, leads, they're selling IULs, and they're like, man, I got all these chargebacks. I'm like, yeah, you sold them a product to save money and build wealth, and right, and they responded to a letter that said, protect my house, right? And so just understanding that. Now, here's the really cool part. We have a really big toolbox. So don't lose sight on, you can sell them multiple products, right? We are able to help a family. That's the whole point of an FIF reset, or that's the whole point of you having a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox. You're going to help them with mortgage protection, and then you're going to help them with any other services that you can, right? That's what come in the FIF. You uncover everything, right? You get to uncover their budget, what they've been doing for work. They've worked somewhere for 10, 15 years. They don't have a 401k. They do have plenty of funds. You help them with mortgage protection, and you've also uncovered a need for an IUL, right? You've also uncovered, hey, you know what? You don't have anything in retirement in place. I can also help with that, right? Now you're writing multiple applications and you're solving, right? You're checking boxes, because that's what we do, right? You're supposed to check different boxes, and different products are for different situations. So just really understanding that. And then if you're working life insurance leads, right, through like Lighthouse or whatever it may be, same thing. Solve their life insurance problem first, right? Then you can offer different solutions, right? It's not trying to say, hey, the best product is the IUL, because, hey, guess what? An IUL is one of the best products out there. We know that. It's not the best product for mortgage protection, right? Because it's still going to be more expensive than a term. It's still going to have different things, right? And in mortgage protection is getting them as much coverage as possible for the lowest amount of premium based on their age, health, and budget, right? And I love to say that mortgage protection, the concept is to get them as much coverage as possible for the lowest premium based on their age, health, and budget. That's what mortgage protection is, right? At its base. And we get to use different products for that, right? So don't always try to bundle one best policy, right? That's not helping the client properly. Multiple products in a home is helping the client properly, so that they can check boxes, right? When I got into the industry, right, I always loved to have, we took a class with Symmetry, and it was really cool because always think of your friends and family, right? Because if it's your friends and family, you always want to do them a little bit better. And so if you think about that, you should do that to your clients too, right? It's always trying to get them as much coverage as possible right now. And again, it's going to be based on their age, their family, right? So many things. But most folks that are buying a mortgage, they just took on a lot of debt. So our job is to get them as much coverage as possible in the next, right, 10, 15, 20 years. And a whole life or an IUL sometimes ain't the best product for that, right? We're trying to get them a lot more coverage. So I got a couple of things, right, of
John, just before you go there, I just want to add, a lot of
yeah,
times we go in there thinking we want to cover the full mortgage or we need to cover the full mortgage. And Brian, I would say, what do you say? Maybe like half or maybe less than that. We even cover maybe like a quarter of it. Maybe we actually
20%, yeah,
cover
20-30% are
actually
actual
cover
full
the full
mortgage payoffs,
mortgage.
right?
And that, a lot of times that's where we start drifting and start looking at products that maybe clients don't qualify for because we want to try to get the full coverage. And 75% of that time we're not covering the full mortgage. It's usually going to be partial, half, or we deal with a lot of equity protection where we're just doing a couple months of protection depending on health wise.
I love that. That's good, right? So I think that's really big to say. Very few times do we pay off the entire mortgage, or do we get a policy in place that would pay off the entire mortgage. right? Fall in love with that concept, right? It's just going to depend on what we're looking for the client. So um, I got a couple of tips on how to, so making sure we all understand, we're not supposed to be product selling. We're supposed to be problem solving, right? So I'm going to start with a couple of tips of being able to recognize, are you product selling? Okay. So if these thoughts ever run through your head, these are indicators that you are product selling, right? So the first one is super easy. Are you looking at the company? Right? Like, hey, I want to use F&G, I want to use Americo, I want to use Mutual of Omaha, I want to use right SBLI. If you are looking at the carrier and you are saying the carrier, let me tell you, I don't even say the carrier name very few times. Only at the very end, once we have a policy in place, I tell them who the carrier is, right? Where they're going to get their information from, who's going to be emailing them, where the envelope is coming from, because I don't product sell, right? So I provide them a solution that's going to fit their needs. So if you're ever saying, hey, so I'm going to show you right a Mutual of Omaha company, they're A rated, they've been around for 100 years, they're the number one company out there, Mutual of Omaha. If you're saying stuff like that, you're product selling, right? You don't have to, right, really emphasize the company name. If you're explaining a lot of, hey, do you want a 15-year, 20-year, 30-year, 10, whatever year term, right, you're product selling. You'll have to trust that if you follow the system and the system teaches you, right, to prep with your upline, right? So that you're not just basing it off of what you think is best for the client, right? Let our experience help you. But if you're pushing, hey, this is a 15-year, hey, I'm going to try to get you a 30-year, hey, I'm going to try to stretch this even longer, you're product selling, right? That's not what we do. The next one is if you're trying to look at writers and sell on writers, right? Like, hey, this is Dottie, this is the best term out there with America, right? It has a built-in accidental rider. It has a built-in right terminal illness, critical illness. If you're pushing all that and you're explaining every single thing that's in there, you're product selling, right? Most of my new agents will even get upset at me when they call me and they're like, "Hey, can you tell me more about this product?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I wish I could. I don't. I don't know. I literally still 7 years later couldn't tell you about any products. Chris Cook explained it to me so well, right? And I'm very simple, right? Amber laughs, right? I'm a 5 letter kind of guy, right? That's the biggest words you're gonna get out of me. And Chris goes, I'm like, how does this work? He goes, it's very simple, Joe. You put a policy in place, they pay $100 a month, and they die, it pays. That's what life insurance is. They die, it pays. It is that simple, right? You don't have to fall in love with everything in the policy, right? Because realize as you start explaining products to a client and you're telling them, hey, this is terminal illness, this has blah, 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 whatever it may be, right? Well, you're giving them ideas to go start thinking about. So when they get their policy, have y'all ever looked at a policy? It doesn't exactly just simply say, hey, 100,000 and you die, and then right the critical illness is 80%. It has it all broken down in lawyer terms, is what I say, right? So when they start reading, all they do is, well, Dottie told me it was going to do this, and I don't know what this word is. And now they're trying to be like, well, where's the 80%? And it says 273,000. And now all of a sudden, right, they're confused. And now they're calling you, and now they're second guessing, like, is this, maybe I should do more research, right? Because we gave them things to think about. Remember, our job is to find them the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium through an experience. And I always love to talk about the experience. That's what we do best. That's why they don't go on, right? Because if they really wanted insurance and they wanted to do it by themselves, they wouldn't have sat in an appointment with you. Because in case you don't know, you can just literally Google mortgage protection and they can go sign up through Ethos and Lemonade and all these other online, right? No agent involved products. That's not what they want, right? It's confusing. They want a trusted life insurance agent to help them. And that's who you are, right? That's why the building rapport, letting them know that you actually care about their problem, then they're going to listen to the solution you can provide for them. And you will
Yeah,
never get a charge. I mean, very, very seldom, right? Like I always love to talk about our chargebacks are very minimal. If you're getting a lot, you need to work on that, right? Like I think I had five, what was it last year, James? Five chargebacks in the
the whole
entire
year, maybe
in the whole
less.
year. Five chargebacks. If you're getting more, you're doing something wrong in the appointment. They're confused. They're looking at their policy, right? You're overselling on price. You're doing something wrong, right? And so it's really listening to the family, right? And then a really good tip too is how do you recognize you're selling on product is if the client gets declined for a term or a whole life or whatever you're showing them, and you're stuck on trying to get them on another term or another identical product. Listen to what I just said. You're stuck on trying to get them into that exact same product. We don't decide what policy they're going to get. Their age, health, and budget decides what policy they're going to get. Now we have recommendations, right? If I got a 56-year-old, right, that says he's healthy, well, my recommendation is let's go with the term so I can get you right the whole house paid off. And then I start filling out the application, Karen, and all of a sudden it gets declined and it tells me right for whatever. And then I pivot to move and same thing, that term gets declined. Guess what? I'm going back to America and I'm going to go to a whole life, right? To a final expense product. Yes, I went from a $250,000 policy to now we're looking at 40 grand. I have no problem with that because I didn't decide that. Not even America or Mood. They didn't decide that. The client did, right? Based on their age, health, and budget, right? Their health stopped them from being able to get those terms with the living benefits or whatever it may have been, right? But I'm not stuck, right? So it's easy for us to just say, hey, so looks like that one's not going to go, right? We're going to go ahead and move you to the next one, right? It's going to be that option 3 we talked about, right? Because based on your age, health, and budget, this is going to be now the best product for you, right? And so a lot of agents get stuck, right? I'll get those phone calls. Well, they got declined with the term from America. They got declined from the term for Move. You know, I'm trying SBLI, but I'm looking at it now. They finally told me that they have this, and I can't see this. Is there another company? Can I go Royal Neighbors, and can I go Transamerica, and can I go over here, right? And if you're stuck, still trying to find your product selling, right? Our job is to make their experience easy, right? And one of the most important things I always love to say is when a client starts getting declined 3 or 4 times, how long do you think they're going to sit there and let you keep getting back on the phone with them, right? It's going to go down a lot, right? Like I have lost, when I was new, I lost so many policies, right? Or being able to help a client because I was stuck trying to go find them a product. And oh, we got declined again. Oh, we got declined again. Oh, we got declined. They're like, you know what? At this point, they think of their you got to think of their ego too. They're sad, right? You're breaking their heart every single time you're telling them, hey, I got you, and then you don't, right? Because you're stuck trying to find their product. Remember, the client experience is one of the biggest things we do too. And the reason they don't go online and Google mortgage protection and go through, right, any other online source that they can just send is because they want to make this simple. They want to be able to say, hey, Julie, what do you think is the best thing for me and my wife? And you say this, and boom, the policy's in place. They're like, wow, that's it? Yeah, that's it. You're covered. Thank you. They want the experience, right? I don't know about y'all. I like easy. I want it as simple as possible. I want somebody to just tell me what I need to do, solve my problem, put the policy in place, and I can walk away.
Yeah, I
That's
would like to say it's like a travel agent. Like why do people go to travel agents? Yeah, because they want to make sure what they're getting, the right product, because a lot of
oh,
times
that's
they
good,
mess
right?
up.
I
So
don't want to
it's
be shopping all these planes and
exactly let them do it
airlines
for
and
you.
right that they want someone to make it easy for them and trust you're putting them right. That's a big thing for yourselves. Trust that you are doing the best thing for the client, right? That's why you have mentors, right? If you ever feel that you like, I don't know if this is the best thing, hey, guess what? You have a ton of people you can call and say, hey, this is my client. This is what they're looking for, right? This is their age, health, and budget. Do I have the right options for them? And we're going to say yes, or we're going to say, hey, maybe I would try this first, right? That way, you know, with confidence, right, that you're helping the family the proper way. So again, right, how do you recognize if you're still looking at products? You're talking a lot about the company, right, the carrier. Are you talking about term or whole life, right? All the benefits that they have. Are you looking at riders, right? You're when you're showing the options, you're telling them every single rider that's in that policy. Um, if they get declined, you lose the client, or you're really stuck on staying on the same product, right? Because after one or two or three at the most, right, of one product gets declined, guess what? It's time to pivot, right? If Americo, Moo, and SBLI or AmAm already said no, right, just stop, go, right, go to the next product, right, the next solution, because you're going to lose that client. You need to help them get coverage in place today. Um, and keep it simple, right? Because one of the biggest things as a new agent is like, well, how do I know how this works? Everybody write this down. I'm gonna tell y'all with the $1 million man, Mr. Chris Cook told me. Everybody write this down. Y'all ready? This is how insurance works. They die, it pays.
Boom.
Boom. That's life insurance. That's why we work with the companies that we work with, right? We work with all the best insurance companies in the country. You don't have to worry about like, oh, you know, I hope they're going to pay you out, right? How many of y'all have heard a client say that? Because we're not selling cheap insurance, right? We're selling the best coverage out there, right? So always remember, it's super simple. They pass, it pays. That's how life insurance works. Do they have a whole bunch of little bells and whistles? Absolutely. But that's not why the client filled out the form, right? When they bought a home and they got a letter in the mail that says mortgage protection, it did not say, hey, there's products out there that can protect your family through critical illness, right? Terminal riders, accidental, like that's not right. Your mortgage is in danger. If you pass away, we don't want the bank to take it. We want your family to keep it. That's what the concept of mortgage protection is. So I love that. Again, I have ran with that for 7.5 years. We are now some of the top producers in Symmetry because we have kept it super simple for the client. Um, so now, okay, we know that's product selling. So how do I problem solve for the client? Okay, I want y'all to write this part down of the real script. One, you should be using the real script. Okay, but there's a couple keys in the real script that help you problem solve. Okay, and the first one is going to be uncovering their why. What are we looking to protect? Right in the script, it says most importantly, who are we looking to protect? Who's that beneficiary? That's their why. That beneficiary is their why, and they're right most of the time their dream home, right, their first home, right, that's their why. Keeping my dream home with the people that I love, that's my why. That's the problem that's out there, or better yet, that's their why. And then where do we find the problem? The problem is in the FIF, right? Everyone knows what the FIF, and I'm not talking about the reset, right? I know I want to make sure we're not confused. Not the FIF reset. That's when you send it to someone for different products. The FIF is the financial information form that's built into the script. That's where you problem solve, because that's where you uncover John makes 10,000 a month, Mary makes 1,500, their bills going out a month are 6,000, and they only have 5,000 in their bank account. There's a problem, right? Does everyone hear that? Right? John passes away. He's still working. None of his income continues to Mary. She only makes 2,500. Their bills going out are $6,000 a month, and they only have 5,000 in their bank account. They don't even have enough to pay next month's bills. That is the problem. Now I can solve it, right? Now I can say, hey, sounds like there's a problem, right? In the script, it even says, John, looks like, right, Mary doesn't have enough to pay the mortgage next month. Then you get quiet and they're like, well, yeah, John, it looks like y'all don't have a month's worth of bills in your bank account savings. They're like, whoa. And then you hit them with the problem. Do you have something in place, John, right now that you're gone tomorrow? Mary doesn't lose the house, looks like next month, right? In 3 months. And they're like, they even take a step back and they look at each other and they're like, no, we don't. How does that make you feel, John? It makes me feel unprepared. John, it sounds like we should probably put something in place today. Well, Joe, that I'm assuming that's why we're here today. That is why, John. It's asking those questions, right, and solving that problem. So how do I solve the problem? Is you have to do that financial information form to a T, right? You got to uncover everything. You have to uncover, right, and take your time, especially as a new agent, right? Let's go through everything, right? What's your electric bill? What's your water bill? Right? What is your credit cards? What do you put into savings a month? Right? What do you have? School loan payments? Do you have right car payments? Do you have insurance? Like you want to break it all down, and if you do the FIF on HQ, does all the math for you. It's super cool, right? But today we're talking about right being able to uncover that problem, and that's the biggest thing. Again, what we do is we have to be able to have a really good conversation with the family and find out, right? Like, hey, John, Mary is right. If one of you are gone tomorrow, what does that look like for you? And then you have a really good idea of how you can solve their problem. Now, most of the time, it will be with what we already pre-selected, right? Because based on their age, health, and budget, or basically based off their age, health, and amount that they owe on the loan from booking the appointment, we have I would say, an 85% chance, right? We have the right product. But inside the appointment, you're going to uncover if that's true or not, right? So that's why I also want to talk about the pivot in the problem solving, because how do I know I'm helping the family the best way possible? Because you got to listen to them, right? Don't worry about your commission. Don't worry about the product, right? Like, oh, this one pays me more. Or I want to sell this one because I'm going to get a higher commission. Look, yes, we're always looking out for you, but we got to find the best thing for them, right? And you're going to uncover it through that process. And so I always love to talk about the pivot, because sometimes you're going to go into an appointment and two things are going to cause you to pivot. Okay. The first one is the easy one. They got declined on whatever they told, right? Whatever we're going to show them, right? Because they said they were healthy and guess what? They weren't, right? That's perfectly okay. Y'all fall in love, right? I just say the client lying to us, but right. The reality is they don't remember, they didn't know, whatever it may be, they didn't get approved. Okay. So you got to pivot. The other situation is in the script, right? You're finding out their needs, and then they tell you, right? And an example I'll give you, right? If I had a 54-year-old male, right, and I was going to go pay off his entire mortgage of 200,000, but I find out, right, he's divorced, his kids live in Wisconsin, he now lives in Arizona, right? He doesn't really talk a lot to his kids. They're not going to move over here because they have families and kids already, right? And he's like, well, I moved over here for work, right? I don't know exactly where this is headed. But if I die, I just want to make sure, right, the 100 grand I put down in my home doesn't go away, right? I'm like, sweet. Are the kids going to keep the house? He's like, no, absolutely not. Then I don't need a $200,000 policy. He right there told me he doesn't need the full mortgage payoff. The kids do not want the house. I'm like, hey, John, it sounds like we need to pivot a little bit, because I think ideally, since we know the kids are not going to keep the house, we just need to make sure. Do you know what they're going to do? He goes, yeah, they're probably going to sell it. Oh, sweet. That we have a program just for you, John. We're going to look at anywhere from 6 months to 2 years worth of mortgage payments. That's equity protection. And that sounds like it's going to be best for you. He goes, yeah, that's exactly what sounds like I need, Joe. Right? Because I don't, there's no reason for me to pay $200 for a $200,000 policy when I know they're going to sell the house. They're well off. They're okay. I just want to make sure I'm not a burden and they at least get the equity I've put into the home. So sweet. Sounds like a $50, right? 1 year policy for your payments is going to do it. Perfect. That policy will never get canceled because that's exactly what he needed, right? Versus him making a $200 payment every month. And he's like, the full 200,000. And he's like, my kids don't even want it. Then they get in an argument with their kid and they're like, man, I ain't paying for it. Then the payment comes out the next day after they fought with their kid, Amber. And they're like, I don't need this. That kid don't need my house. Boom, canceled.
That's my favorite, Joe, right? I had a client in an appointment one time at the beginning. He said, look, I don't like my kids enough to give them the house. They just need time to sell it. They need a year to sell it. And I was like, golden.
Right. So it's listening to, right. Again, and a concept that I loved that I heard early on in Symmetry was we're consultants. That's what we really are. We're consultants. The sale was made. Understand the sale for mortgage protection or life insurance was made when they filled out the lead. Right. When they responded to a lead that says life, that the sale was made right there because they're like, oh, I probably need that, right? Or I need more information. We're consultants. Because we're not picking the product. We just need to consult with them. I need to know everything I can about you financially, right? Who are we looking to protect? What's in place if something happens, right? The crazy part in America right now, very few people have anything in place, right? So there's a huge need for what we do, right? So being able to really listen to them and build some rapport, you really get to problem solve, right? Because then you decide, right, what you're going to use, right? Because I don't even like to say product because we don't product sell. And then I also want to hit a little bit on the experience, right? They love to be able to get on the phone or Zoom, however you're running your appointment, and have a conversation with you. And they love the fact that Amanda calls them and you build rapport with them, Amanda, and you're sharing your story, they're sharing theirs. They understand that they're with a trusted person and that they're having a real conversation. Their walls come down and then they get to say, like, what do you think? What's the best? Hey, based on everything you told me, this is what other families do. And listen to that sentence. Based on everything you have told me today, this is what other families do. This is not what Amanda thinks is best. This is not what Joe thinks is best. This is what most and other families do because we're not picking it for them, right? We've just done this long enough and we work as a team that we know, hey, these are the solutions best for families in those situations. And then the pressure comes off of you also as an agent, right? Of having I feel like I have to really I don't think they're convinced. Correct. You're not supposed to convince anyone for this, right? You're supposed to uncover their need. They're supposed to be jumping at the opportunity for you to fill out an application for them. When you hear us run some of these live appointments, it's like, no, that's what we need, Amber. Because we did a really good job of showing them there's a problem, right? And I think that's as a new agent, sometimes it's a little scary, right? Because we're poking the bear. For me, especially, right? I always love to talk about this. As a Hispanic, we were really taught to respect our male elders and never ask them financial questions. It's like a big no-no. It was so hard for me to ask a male, say, hey, what's in your bank account, sir? Like I don't even know what's in my dad's bank accounts, right? Like that was so weird for me. For me, it was uncomfortable and disrespectful, right? But if I want to do my job and service that family properly, I need to know what's in the savings account. I need to know if there's another savings account. I need to know if there's another source of income. I need to know if he doesn't have a month's worth of bills in his bank. And that's so uncomfortable to ask. That's why we don't, right? If you're not asking, I promise you, that's why you're uncomfortable. It's so weird to say, Hey, so you've worked for 40 years and you don't have more than 3,000 in your bank account and your bills are 6,500, right? It's a little insulting. But that's how we solve these problems, right? Is asking them, right? Because hey, look, there's a SoundCloud audio. If y'all haven't heard it, listen to this one. It's called Emotional Labor. So it's in Symmetry Financial, right under SoundCloud, or in SoundCloud under Symmetry Financial, and it's called Emotional Labor. We make money not physically, not physical labor. We make it emotional labor. The more uncomfortable your conversations are, I promise you, the higher your income is going to be, because you're going to have a bigger impact in that home. Because they're going to say, when you bring out the emotion and the actual problem, there's no longer a price on that policy. Okay. If you ever feel like, hey, I'm only selling 30, 40, 50, $60 policies, and I don't understand how Amber wrote $4,000 and two homes yesterday. And why does Elijah write, I think his average is like $2,500 apps, Xander, right? Right? Like, why are their APVs so high? Because they've taken the price off of the product, right? And the problem has no price. Because I want y'all to really hear what I'm saying here. If somebody ran a really good appointment on me, are you telling me there's a price tag on Sandra? Sandra's my wife. You're telling me there's a price tag on Joey, Tiffany, Johnny, and Austin having a house to live? Because there ain't. There's
So
not a
Joe,
price tag on my kids.
on that, I have a question for you, Joe.
Yeah.
So if, for example, I had a client yesterday who no longer, since they filled out the form, no longer has a spouse, no longer has a house, right? So they have no beneficiaries anymore. The rapport was fine, but the buildup and the emotion was kind of distant at that point. Other than the pivot to the FIF reset, which I did, what else do I offer a person like that who, again, no longer has that emotional buy-in to help them say, hey, this is something I need?
Oh man, I'm glad you said that. Nothing, buddy. You did perfect, right? If
Fair,
remember,
fair.
right? We don't help every single family, right? I always love to say this because a lot of new agents think Amber and James and we, and Xander, they think we write apps every single day, Xander. They think we write apps we don't. We write apps once or twice a week because most of the days we're getting told no. The no is so many different ways, but Vincent, I love that you brought that up. Look, our job is to protect the house and the person that's going to keep the house. If there's no need there, there's no need there,
Right. Okay.
right?
I just
So
want to make sure that I wasn't
yeah,
missing something for the client. Because again, we want to protect people. And the only thing that I could think of to help protect him is, yes, he has some assets. Maybe protect yourself while you're still here. Let's do the reset.
correct.
Like,
And that's why the
that's it.
reset, dude, you did so awesome with the reset, right? Because the reset protects them, right? So like when they don't have a beneficiary, they don't have, right? Sometimes it's young kids, right? The 22-year-old that just bought a house, he doesn't have a spouse, right? Whatever it may be, and they're like, I don't need. Hey, we have a CBO, right? Hey, we have an IUL that can help you with stuff, right? Because mortgage protection just came off the plate because you asked really good questions, Vincent, and you found out they don't have a beneficiary. There's no one to protect other than themselves. So now we have to pivot. How do we help put something in place that protects them? And that's going to be the FIF, right? That's going to be a CBO policy, a return of premium. That's going to be an IUL, right? Because that's going to put things in place that's going to help them. So you did perfect, dude, right? We don't help
Okay.
every single family. And then on the other end of that, Vincent, if you haven't, sometimes you're just going to get something like what Amber says, right? And to an extreme of, I don't care what my kids do, right? Or I don't care, right? Like sometimes I sit with a husband and wife and he's like, yeah, she'll figure it out. Right. And guess what? That's perfectly fine, right? My job is not to judge him. Does he want to protect his wife if he dies?
Right.
If she's going to fit. Hey, you know what? Actually, most of the time, it's the wife saying, or the spouse, right? The other, whoever we're, the opposite person we're talking, they're like, yeah, no worry. I don't need that. I'll figure it out. Okay. Right. Like, don't worry about that. We don't help everyone. right? We just uncover the need, and sometimes there's not a need, right? Like if they don't care about what's going to happen to the house, mortgage protection is not for them. If you try to force them to buy that policy, and some of us are good to sell and we'll get them to say yes, that those are your cancellations, right? Those are your chargebacks, because 2 months later they're like, I really don't care what they do with the house, and they're going to cancel the policy, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, Vincent, right? Like not every home is going to have mortgage protection, but that's what's really cool, dude. And you did so good. So kudos to you on that, of pivoting to, hey, well, there's no one to protect, but let's protect you in this case, right? And we can do that through an FIF, right? That's an awesome pivot, bud. And then so back to the experience, right? Uh, Remember again, they could, if they really wanted a price shop, if they really didn't need you, they, in case you don't know, they can Google mortgage protection, and there's a whole bunch of online resources. They can go get coverage without you. Okay, they're here for the experience. They want the trust, and they want a person. They want you on the other side of that phone or Zoom to help them, because they don't want to make that decision and they need help making that decision. So trust that. So then trust that you're there to guide them through the easiest experience ever. And why I'm pushing this is because we don't price shop either, right? So in case you don't have this order, this is the order. You will get off an appointment with coverage. This is the 5 carriers that are, again, make sure you go with your agency owner, and they have different orders, right? Based on things they're trying to qualify for yourselves, right? But this is the order I love to teach an agent. Can I cover them with Americo? So write that name down, Americo, right? And that's the one with the O, not American Amicable, right? Americo. So can I cover them with Americo? The next carrier, Mutual of Omaha. The next one after that is going to be SBLI. The next one after that is going to be American Amicable. And then finally, it's going to be Corebridge or AIG, however you know. They're the same company. Why this order? The experience. Okay. I want y'all to really think about this. If this is why Uber and DoorDash are billion-dollar companies at this point. How many of y'all would pay $3 to $10 more for the food to get delivered to you and not have to leave your house? How many of y'all would pay an extra $5 to $20 to not have to wait in line? I would, right? I just paid a crap ton in Disney to not wait in line, right? Like we want the experience. So you start with Americo. It is the easiest policy, signature wise, and breathe. It takes, once you fine tune your ability to go through a policy, you can write an Americo policy in 7 minutes. I've clocked myself. 7 minutes. Approved. They got an email and the text. 7 minutes to get an approval through Americo. Okay. Now, the beauty of that is their experience. Hey, because I'm on the phone with them, Xander, and I'm filling it out. And I'm like, hey, there's a 6-digit code. And they give it to me. And I'm still talking about their dogs or whatever. And we're going through it. And I'm like, yeah, one more 6-digit code. Can I get that? And they're like, yeah. So when do we sign, Joe? I'm like, no, you're done. You're approved. They're like, what? Yeah, you're approved. Man, last time I did something like this, Joe, it took like an hour and a half, or I had to go do blood work, or I had to go, yeah. No, you're good to go, buddy. They said, yes, you have everything we talked about. You are covered. Congratulations. There is nothing, I promise y'all, there's nothing like an Americo experience. It ain't because I'm biased of Americo. I'm just telling you, look, I like ease. I like I like the best experience for the client, putting product in or putting protection in place, higher commissions, ease for the client, and that's going to be Americo. I promise you. Once you go to the next one is right. And so the power in Americo too is almost instantly it tells you that they're not going to cover them too. So there's a lot of power in getting the decline right there and then that fast, right? Because that first text message goes out and what, Amber, a minute, 2 minutes later, like it's telling you yes or no.
Yeah. And what I love with that too, right, Joe? It's actually happened to me yesterday. My internet was being slow. The client got the text from Americo that they were approved before it showed me on my screen that they were approved.
I love it. I love it. Right. So there's power in the decline too, right? Because it's going to say no. Then you can pivot immediately to Mutual of Omaha and not have to make this big old deal of going through an entire application and getting right license numbers and all this stuff. America's the easiest one. Once you pivot to Move, it's the second easiest one, right? Because now you're going to need a little bit harder signatures. Hey, it's a text message, yes, but hey, I'm going to need you, Xander, to click on that link. And in that link, I'm going to need you to, it's going to ask you for a 4-digit PIN, and it's going to be the last 4 of your social. And then I'm going to need you to click these 2 buttons, and then it's going to say, I agree. And then they're like, oh, I'm stuck. There's a pop-up blocker and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, welcome to number 2. Right? That's why. Okay. We have lost policies because they just get so frustrated and they're just like, never mind, call me tomorrow and good luck on getting them back on the phone. Right. So then, right, Mutual of Omaha, the cool part is at least in the first signature of Mutual of Omaha, and then you get a little more information, some driver's license and a little more stuff, right? Then it'll tell you if it's favorable or not. Right. So again, the second easiest, right? And so that's why we go in order. It's for the experience of the client, right? If you think $3 to $20 is the difference of you getting the deal, right, or helping that family, your product shopping, your price, right? There is no price on my kids. There is no price on my wife. And there is no price on my experience of how fast and easy Xander made it for me. There is no price on that. I promise you that it's in your head. You are product selling and price selling. We're problem solvers. There's a problem we uncovered, and I want to make this as an easy experience as possible. So that's why that order is in there in place. Again, right, the rest get a little bit more complicated. Some of them don't give you an instant decision. Now they got to wait 2 or 3 days. Now they're contemplating. Now they're worried. I'm not healthy. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe that the price is because they think of all kinds of stuff, so that when you call them back and they're like, you know what, Xander, never mind. Right? Versus you help them right there and then in the first appointment, they absolutely love you. Michael, you got your hand up.
So I wrote an app on Monday of last week for a lady in Florida, and she wanted $100,000 to pay off the mortgage on her house in Florida to leave to her grandson. And she makes $1,300 a month. She said she had $100 budget. Okay. The grandson was there on the appointment. We looked, couldn't find anything that would cover what she wanted. We finally found AmAm Term Made Simple. Okay. I had never written an app with AmAm before, Term Made Simple, and it's been like 10 or 12 days, and the client just withdrew the application. Like they called American Amicable and canceled it. So it's just to your point about doing with the least resistant. I could have sold her $40,000 or $45,000 with Americo at the same budget. It would have solved the problem to help the grandson out, and I would have had a happy client. Still would have been the same APV.
Oh, and you know what? I love that, right? Because that's such a misconception. I could have gotten them this, and now I'm only getting them that. This was never on the plate. It's just a theory in your head of I could have, because I'm product selling, right? Or I'm trying to solve this. I'm stuck on this theory, right? Because the reality is, right, is now there's no protection in place, right? So we didn't help them.
Yeah, right? I didn't help them.
And that's right. And dude, that happens so much, right? And again, we have to go through that to understand, right? So many times we're like, well, I need to get them this. And it's, remember too, because this sounds so weird to say, we're not here to get them what they want. Okay. Everybody wants a $50 a month policy for $500,000. Everybody wants that. I want that. I'm an insurance agent and I can't have that.
Yeah, they're like, I saw an ad where it's like I can get $500 for like $20, 500,000.
No, you can't. Right? Everybody wants that. Right? And so that's also a misconception. Our job is not to get them what they want. Our job is to get them the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium based on their age, health, and budget. right? And their problem, obviously. So just remember that. I love that thanks for saying that, Michael, because that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Again, sometimes we think we're helping them, and then all of a sudden product never gets put in place, right? Or the policy never gets put in place. We really never help them. So
Joe, let me ask a follow-on question if I could real quick.
Yeah.
Before Roberto goes. So Rhea put in the chat, and I didn't know this, that they have to verify licensing for everybody in the hierarchy in order for that policy to go through. If it's the first one. So what would I have said to the customer when I'm there? Because I didn't know this at the time, and Americo is, MM is fourth down on the list, and I thought I was getting her the most coverage that she could qualify for the least price. How would you have what would you have said to her?
Again, just make sure you're sticking with Americo, right? Because the Americo policy will still tell you approved, right?
Yeah.
It may get stuck on licensing and all that stuff too, but you're able to tell the client you're good to go, you're done.
Yeah.
There's so much power in that instant decision.
Yeah.
So that's why just keep it super simple, right? Again, don't overthink what you already did, worry about the future, right? And just stay in that. There's so much power, right? Again, I didn't pick these carriers because I liked them. I picked them because I saw that they were solving the problem in the best order, the fastest, and ease for the client, right? Like I didn't come up with this because I like the certain carrier. I've just in 7 years of experience, right? And this comes from I'm privileged enough to say I'm one of the highest issue rated persons, right? And what that means for a new agent, right, is if I write a policy with a client, it's issued, paid, and policy is in place and stays in place, right? And it's because I've noticed over the years, right? I'm a very big pattern person, and I noticed that these carriers keep that pattern in place. And Roberto.
Robert's fine. Hey, just so you mentioned when you get the favorable or unfavorable result or like pre-underwriting thing. I've gotten through with a couple of times with the unfavorable. Just don't do it, right?
Correct.
I
If
mean,
it says unfavorable, if it says unfavorable,
it's gonna
remove,
be unfavorable.
pivot. Unfavorable means no.
Okay.
Right.
It's just gonna be a no.
And the reason why moo is number 2 is because it could still say favorable, and there's still a few times it's going to still say no at the very end.
It can still
right.
be
So it just happened to one of my agents yesterday. Right. They're like, oh, it's favorable. It's going to give them the graded policy. And then at the end, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, no.
Never mind.
Right? So versus America, it's just straight up yes or no. There is no if and. That little green box pops up, you are golden. So
Awesome.
keeping that order. And then, right, so we got about 5 minutes left, and I want to talk about records, right? So now it's, okay, look, I know how to help a family, right? I know not to product sell, how to problem solve, and how to make it easy for them, right? I also want to talk about, because I'm watching all of y'all put your numbers in bands, and I'm watching them grow, and I'm getting excited, right? And then I'm also getting a whole bunch of phone calls right now from a lot of agents saying, hey, I'm just not finding, right? Like I thought it'd be a little bit better, right? Like I'm not getting the results I want, right? Realize you cannot continue to do the same thing you do every single week, right? Even though we teach consistency just means you're on it every single week, right? Like I'm consistently, right, putting in the work that I know is going to help me win. Does everyone understand that you are your own business? Like Dottie, you are a business of one if you're brand new, right? Jen, you're a business of one if you're brand new, right? If you have 3 agents, right? Amber has 7, 8, 9, right? You're a business of 7 or 8 or 9. Every business is supposed to grow. No business is supposed to do what it did last week. Now, do we do what we did last week? Yes. Sometimes we do less than last week, and less than last year, and less than last month, right? And less than last month, last year, right? If you're a business owner, you know what I'm talking about. What does that mean? That means I did less in June this year than last year, June, right? So the only way you can break records and continue to grow is you have to know all your numbers, okay? One of the biggest things I tell a new agent If you just wake up and start dialing and trying to help a family, you might as well quit, because you're trying to just have this as you are a business. Every business in America has tracking. You need to know what your dials are, how many sits did you sit with, what your APV is, how much your investment towards your APV is, what you did last month, what you did last year, what you did this quarter. You have to track that. If you are not tracking, I promise, quit right now. I have yet to see an agent be successful that doesn't track their numbers. It's impossible. They don't know what to beat, right? And they don't know, Xander. They're going to call and they're going to be like, I did more, I think, right? I invested more, or I bought a few more leads, and I'm like, well, you bought $10 more leads last month and this month, and your goal was $50,000 more. Like, where do you think out of those $10 you were going to do more? Right? You have to track your numbers. And so for me, how do I make this simple for y'all? Is I just like to beat my records. I'm not talking about beat the big numbers. I'm talking about beat your records. And the only way you can beat your record is you got to know what your numbers were. What did you dial last week? If you dialed 250 for the week, then this week, let's go for maybe 500. Right? If you dialed 500 last week, let's go for 600 this week. Right? If you dialed 1,000 last week, let's go for 1,200. But you got to have that number, because then you can say, hey, if I've ridden 6,000 in a week before, that's my record. I'm going for 7. Right? I'm going for blank. But you got to know that number. And this is super important. You have to try to beat your record. Every business in America is not built, and they were never designed to do the same thing they did last week, last month, last year. You would be going backwards. Everything gets more expensive. So if a business, just their business plan, Xander, was, let me just sell another 100,000 like last year, right? They lost money this year. You have to grow as a business, and you are a business. I can't emphasize that enough. You got to know your numbers, and you have to try to beat your records. And this is where it should excite you, right? If you've dialed 200, go for 3. If you've dialed 3 in a day, what's your record dials in a day? Have you ever tried to beat that? And if you haven't, why not? Do you understand? If you just beat a record, guess what? You're moving up. Because the only thing that comes after beating records in activity is you start beating records in APV. And you start beating records in APV, you start beating records in, does anyone know? What's the next one? I'm going to leave y'all. Come on. Deposits, baby. Xander knows. We are here to make an income. So I'm going to say those 3 again for y'all. When I start beating records in activity, you get to start beating records in APV. And then you start beating records in deposits. So if any of y'all are ever looking at your business and like, man, I want to make more money this month than last month, there's only one way to do that. You beat your record in activity, you're going to beat the record in your APV, and then you're going to beat the record in your deposits. There is absolutely no way around that, right? And that comes with everything. I need to invest in more leads. Right? So what's your record in a lead investment? Well, my record is one time I bought $500 worth of leads, Joe. Well, let's go for 750. Let's go for 800. Let's go for 1,000. It's coming. I promise. You beat a record in activity, a record, right, in APV, and you're going to beat a record in deposits. That's the only way a business grows. Now here, I'm going to leave y'all with a little bit of builders in you. Okay. Now, how do I keep growing that? Where like, I can't dial more than 1,500 dials in a week, Joe. I can't buy more than $1,200 worth of leads in a week, Joe. That's right. You can't. You're kind of maxed out on that. Well, guess what? If I hire an Amber, my activity just tripled because she dials more than me. And if I hired a James, now our lead investment, right, is now 5,000 a week in leads. And now my APV is not 8,000 for my personal pin. My APV is now 25,000 for the week. And now my deposits went from 5,000 in a week to 12,000 in a week. Right? So also remember, if you're building right? That's also how you break records, and it keeps a lot of it makes it exciting, right? For those of y'all that have teams, try to beat each other's records, right? As individuals, have a running buddy, because that is the funnest way to keep this business moving for you. Break records. And one of the biggest things, and I'll leave y'all with this, right, is sometimes when you're getting coached, it sucks. Have y'all ever called your upline and be like, man, this and this, and they're like, well, you're supposed to be doing this, and it feels like a beat up session. Let me tell you, for a coach, it feels like a beat up session. I hate it, right? But guess what? I have to keep telling you the same thing. One of the biggest things I love to teach is you have to bring me a win. What do you want me to celebrate if there's nothing to celebrate? How can I celebrate if Xander calls me and he did 500 last week in dials, wrote $3,000, and this week he calls me and he did 300 in dials and wrote $2,000? I can't. Right? I have no control in that. Xander does. So y'all have to create the win. So when you're getting coached, think of it that way. Every single week, what's a win I can create so that when I call Nate, when I call Amber, when I call Xander, it's fun, because all of us are proud of a record. Hey, I have a record in dials this week. I just wanted to let you know, Jeff. Hey, I have a record in APV. I have a record in sits, right? Don't focus on the app. Remember, activity first, then APV, then deposits. So the activity has to be your main resource of wins, right? We don't write apps every single day. That doesn't mean you're successful. What means you're successful is, hey, I dialed more than I did last time. Hey, I sat with more. I booked more. I got more no-shows. Because if you get more no-shows, if you read the great book of Go for No, if you're getting more no's, more yeses are coming. Period. It is what it is. They may not come this week. They all come. Let me tell you, they always come at the very end. They're the last appointment. They're on Fridays. I hate it. It's like the producer joke. But the apps always come at the very end. They don't come for the person that stopped. That's why you have to beat your record, because beating your record from last week doesn't allow you to stop. And it allows you to uncover, right, that APV finally. So if you ever find yourself too, like, man, I'm beating records or I'm moving forward, but I don't find the APV, it's usually because you stopped. So again, I'll leave y'all with, right, create a record, beat it, right? And then call your upline. Hey, I just beat my all-time dial record, my all-time sit record, book record, no record, whatever it is, it makes it fun. I promise you. And so I hope this was super helpful for y'all. Again, anything that y'all get out of this call, if it helped you help a family, if y'all can post on Band, it really does help everyone as a community together. So see y'all on the next one. Thanks.